Well, good morning, everyone, again. And we are starting off today with the best workshop. Um, the idea of being able to not work if you don't have to. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I don't know most of the names. I'm assuming some associate faculty are probably here as well. Perhaps a few full-time, if you don't mind. If you want to throw it in the chat, just kind of what your role is. I'll try to tailor my presentation around the audience that I do have, not the audience I might have had. So I'm just going to say associate faculty teaching blank or full-time faculty in blank. If you would just go ahead and put that into the Zoom chat. Uh, so like anatomy. All right, all right. New full-time. Adria. Oh, Adria, we've had some wonderful back and forths with curriculum, I think. So I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing from me, but that's right. All right. Jonathan, new full-time faculty in art department. Awesome. Awesome. Ignacio, full-time automotive. Oh, great. I know they had a few retirements over there, so that's great. Molly, associate faculty teaching ESL. Okay. And Scott, associate faculty MAT graphic design. Wow, you might be in that new building over there, huh? That new beautiful building 28. All right. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Yeah, it's a Cadillac. I am sitting in an office that has no windows, to which I have put little, you might be able to see it right over here. This is a picture of a porthole with an ocean view, so it looks like I might be able to see something. Of course, I cannot, but yeah, it was a storage closet, and now they ran out of faculty offices, so they put me in here, and then afterwards they said, "Oh, wait. Actually, you're not supposed to be in there. It's not an office." Um, but now that I'm here, it's like nobody else can be in here, so I get uh, a solo storage area all to myself with no window. An art gallery over there too. Oh, thanks. Yeah, rub that in, Jonathan. Thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot. Jiminy Christmas. All right, all right. Okay, let's get rolling on retirement and pension work. So, if you have never been to one of my workshops, I do put together some handouts and documents, and they are through your MiraCosta Google Suite. So again, I see some of you on cell phones, which means most likely you won't be participating in a full way. It's very a little bit challenging to kind of do that with this. So the way that I typically go about doing this is, excuse me, I'll go to Google, but I'll usually go in an incognito window, and that way it doesn't mess up anything else I have going on. And then you can just log in. You type in your MiraCosta email. I know I'm talking to associates, so I'm just giving you the tips in case you've never done this. I know that that's not the case for all, but and then it takes you from your MiraCosta email to a two-factor authentication. And at that point, you're able to put in your username, just the username, which is the part before the at miracosta.edu. So make sure you put that in and then authenticate yourself with whatever tool you use. There's a couple different tools you could use to authenticate through Okta. Okay. And once you get there, what I'll do is I will give you the link in the chat. Now, it is my recommendation that you download the Word document that I'm about to send, and I will put the slide deck at the end. So my thought is I'm going to put a Google link. Again, if you're in the MiraCosta suite, you should be able to access this no problem. If you're not, if you're using your own private private Google piece, then you may not be able to see it. I'm just verifying it does say MiraCosta College. Everybody can view it. Okay, so the link is going in the chat right now. And there it is. And this is for spring 2026 When this is all done, I do release the recording. I put all the slides, I put the worksheets as well in a Canvas course that MiraCosta folks can access afterwards. So again, if you wanted to, now my recommendation is once you click on that link is to download the file so you can view it as a Word document. There's times where the formatting in Google Docs does get a little bit messed up, but it's just easier to share that way. Okay. So if someone wanted to make sure, if they want to click on that, make sure they have access to that through their MiraCosta account, that would be great. But I'm going to give a brief little while you're doing that. Again, that's in the chat. So again, thanks to everyone for being here. I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a discussion of what we're kind of going over, and based on your comments, we may change that just a little bit, but we'll see. So I'll discuss the history of pensions in California, kind of describe to you how we got here. Some of you may be somewhat new. Mine says can't access the file. You're in your MiraCosta Google through an incognito, Adria, or are you through just through your normal? You clicked on it in your normal Google. Make sure that you log into your MiraCosta Google, or I just don't give out access to these for just anyone. You got to be. It's like Costco membership, you know. Got to be part of the club. Uh, all right. So history. How do we get here? You're in your MiraCosta Google. The entire folder is shared with MiraCosta College. Anyone who's logged into that can view it. All right. I will ask you to try the incognito because your normal mode, if you also have a personal Google, then you have to make sure you're in the correct one. It's basically you have multiple Google accounts active in one browser. So either that, or you could open up a different browser and just log into that browser with your MiraCosta. So I'll give you a couple options there. Jonathan had to copy and paste the link in incognito mode. Yeah, it does. It defaults to your personal mode, and your personal mode doesn't have access. So again, just if you're opening in normal Google, you're like, I'll do it this way. It may or may not work. So again, how do we get here? We're going to talk about how money works over the long term. What can we do about it? My goal is that you understand the big picture and a lot of the terminology. Only seeing a Lex file. The, the link I sent should take you to a page that starts with how can we protect ourselves. But I'll send the link one more time. Copy the link. There we go. I think it's the same link, but okay. All right. Sorry about that. Trying to get everybody access, of course, to make sure they can participate fully. Um, got it. Okay. Good, good, good. All right. Let's see here. All right. How do we know? What do we want to know? What do we need to know? So again, if you're new to thinking about retirement terms, there's a lot of words that get thrown around in the media, in many places. So what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we understand what those terms mean. And I'll try to make sure I go over that. And then for part four, how can I afford supplemental retirement? Is it even possible? And if we have time, I'll talk about our pay stubs. Why is it so important to check your pay stubs? And here we go. So this was the fiscal year 2024 reports um, showing net position of STRS. This is something that many of you may or may not be interested in, but if you're really looking at your pension and trying to make sure that it's actually there in the future, it's important to know how much money is actually going into the STRS position. So fall 2024, they ended up with 392. Again, these are all in thousands of dollars. So make sure you multiply by 1,000, $392 billion, making it the number three pension system in the United States. Number two, I believe, is CalPERS, which is for classified staff and other public employees in California. And the number one system is the Thrift Savings Plan, the TSP. Okay, I'm going to pop into a YouTube video to give us a brief History of California Pensions. This unfortunate video was created by yours truly, and so we will suffer through whatever comes out here. Let's see. Okay. Oops, I got to make sure I share with sound. Okay, share sound. And bring it over here. So it should be on your screen now. Let me double check my share. Okay. There we go. Okay. So it is there and it is shared with sound. Phew. Okay, here we go. All right, so this for some of you who are kind of new to pensions, you understand where when they use the terminology, the California rule, you get to kind of know where that comes from. So the California rule was created to make sure that when you start a job, that the company or the pension that you agreed to sign up for stays in effect the entire time you have the position. So as you may notice, you cannot change the pension in a substantive way without giving a corresponding benefit in return. So if they do make changes to your pension, they have to make sure there's an offsetting benefit. All right. Well, now let's talk briefly about MiraCosta. MiraCosta, yes. Um, this is MiraCosta's salaries. This is on the left, class 2, step 1, and on the right-hand side is class 6, step 30. So what you'll notice is the dollar amounts are half as much on the left. They're double on the right. So yes, that is $200,000 that it will be at in 2027. We will cross that plateau. There's a big there's a big spike here in the middle in the 90s to around 2008. And that was because MiraCosta Board of Trustees voted. You may be able to see kind of the stagnation that was happening there for a little bit. Salaries were kind of going up here at the beginning, but very, very slowly. We were in the middle of state salaries across the board. And then the state allowed districts to move to what's known as basic aid, sometimes now called community funded status. And then I don't know if you know what happened, but there was this big .com thing, and in California, housing went through the roof. Well, community funding is based on property taxes of your district. And our district contains 3 neighborhoods that are incredibly wealthy. So that's why this huge peak came up into about 2009, and then it leveled off with absolutely no change whatsoever for about 6 years. And that was the time period when, well, maybe something big happened around 2008, 2009 that caused us not to have increases. But it also was a time period of some social change here at MiraCosta as the full-time faculty unionized in 2014, took their first new contract in 2015, and from that point on, there has been a constant cost of living adjustment that was not there prior to that. Yes, 2008. Some of you remember just a minor little blip. Freddie and Fannie Mae dropping almost to zero. Bear Stearns went down to nothing. A huge crash. So things had to change in the state. Um, you are a pension fund manager and you are investing heavily in the stock market tanks, you have got to start making some changes. So CalSTRS, which is for most faculty, is the system that they're using. Some of you may be under PERS if you started in a PERS related position prior to becoming faculty, but STRS is the main one. In 2010, they removed what's called the longevity bonus. And in 2013, they implemented the two-tier structure for pensions. If you're a new hire into the system, it is called a 2% at 62. And if you're already in the system, they let you stay with the old system, which was known as 2% at 60. And you did have an age bump if you had 30 years of service or more in the old system. They also removed that in the new system. Some of you might have heard of this. Sometimes you'll see the acronym PEPRA, P-E-P-R-A, and that's the Public Employee Pension Reform Act of 2013. So anyway, how what could the impact be? Well, you might, if you look at what the changes they made, they removed the longevity bonus. That only impacted people with more than 30 years of service. And they actually removed that bonus in the middle of a system change, which because it was considered a bonus, they considered it not part of the base pension plan. I know a few MiraCosta people who were probably about 6 months away from getting that and retiring, and they took it away before that happened. The 2% at 62, that will make a difference if you think about it. It means people have to work 2 years longer to get the same benefits effectively. But it only applied to people who started in the new system. So in 2013. So for many of them, they might need to work 25 or 30 years before they would be retiring, before the system would feel that. So really, PERS and STRS both made major changes like this. They said, hey, these changes are only going to account for 5 to 10% of our liabilities. And liability is not a good word when you have a pension. So liabilities were in the 60 to 70 billion dollar range, 60 to 70 billion dollars of them saying we don't have enough if everybody decided to utilize the retirement system. We need more people to keep working. So making small cuts wasn't going to happen. The California rule means you can't reduce payouts. They needed one small thing. I'll turn it over to my wonderful audience today. Can you guess what that one small thing is? STRS went to the state and they asked just for one thing. Just one little thing. Anyone think of what STRS would ask for? A Control Z button? Nope, not a Control Z button. Adjunct faculty? They did not ask for adjunct faculty, but I appreciate that coming in from the phone. And Janine says more money. Hey, that's right. They just need one thing, and it's a lot more money, and then we won't be in this financial hole. Okay, so would more money help? Up until 2014, the member contribution was 8%. That means you as an employee would pay 8% of your gross pay into STRS. Your employer, which is MiraCosta, would pay 8.25%. Effectively, it's supposed to be at the state level the same, but there is an account charge of 0.25%, and that's why there's a little bit of a difference. The employer covers that account charge, and the state was contributing about 3%. So if you add those up, 16, 19%, so less than 20% of your salary would be going into this. They indicated at the time that money coming in from us in this huge Ponzi scheme. Oh, I'm sorry, pension system. The money coming in from that would account for 42% of the resources, and the investment returns, the money they get from the stock market, would provide 58% of the resources. Well, how much more money do they want? Well, here's what it changed. At 2%, 60 members, that again, the ones who have been in the system for a while, they changed from 8% to 10.25%. And the 2% at 62, the new members moved from 8% to 9.205. That was over 3 years. There was a provision in the bill that allowed them to raise it by another full percent if they weren't making enough money. And guess what? It took them 0 days to enact that. So if you're in the new system right now, you're paying 10.205, almost the same as the old members, but not exactly. So there is still a little bit less that you're paying in, but you do have to work 2 years longer. All right, now about the district. Imagine Miracosta sitting here going, ha ha ha, y'all got to pay more in. Yeah, it was way worse for the district. This actually almost bankrupted many educational districts because it went from 8.25% over 7 years. It was a 7 year change to 14.43, then 16.28, then 17.10, all the way up to 19.1%. So that means now the district is paying 20% of your salary into STRS, and they don't get to have really a say about it. The state did increase as well from the 3% up to over 6%. The actuals now are they're paying around 8, the district's paying around 19, and you're paying right around 10. So if you add all of those up right now, we're at 29 plus another 8, you're at 37%. Okay. Now just be aware the goal was to be fully funded in 2046. That's what the law said. So all of these changes, they go away in 2046. I know it's just around the corner for many of you. All right. Would this make a difference? Um, yeah, so it's gonna be around 37%. I should have updated that slide. Still says 2024. I forgot to update that slide. Sorry. I did my own calculation. If I wanted to have a pension-like retirement system of my own, I would need to put away around 30 to 33% of my salary. So this 37% is great. But again, part of that is digging us out of a hole. It's not that it's just set up to go from here. If everything else stayed the same, they brought in 7.5% returns, we're going to be fine. But I hope some of you are saying, wait a minute, Scott, they can't make me pay more without giving me something in return. That would violate the California rule. You showed us the video. You're absolutely right. And so the state and CalSTRS said, here's what we're going to give you as a benefit. There is a 2% of your initial pension added annually as a benefit payment. It's a cost of living in a sense. Now, just be aware, it does not compound. It is always 2% of your initial pension, and it's added to your annual amount each year. So it goes up in a linear style, a straight line, as opposed to that exponential curve that some of you might be seeing with compound interest or inflation. But here's the thing. It had been given, this cost of living adjustment, this little adjustment, had been given every single year since the pension started. But it was listed in the documents as an option. It was not a guaranteed benefit. So what they did is they changed the wording and made it a guaranteed benefit. So the thing that everybody was getting every year, now everybody will get every year. And you can see how that would offset paying in more money. I'm only a little bit snarky today, in case you were commenting on that. No, this is Scott Light. I was working on curriculum yesterday when I wanted to be updating these files, and I did not make it to bed until 4:30. So I am only a little bit snarky today.
I think we're going to go with you guys.
That's great. Awesome.
So Stockton declared bankruptcy. It was forced to eliminate healthcare coverage for all retirees. Many other places across the country were in worse shape. Central Falls, Rhode Island cut pensions by 55%. 2015, this was a scary one if you were working at the time. California judge ruled that cutting pensions was acceptable if the city is broke. Now, we are part of CalSTRS, which is not really a city, but they believe the law would have applied there as well if STRS was running so short of money that they could have cut pensions. That was a problem. But again, we would have fought it because we have the California rule. 2015, CalPERS lowered their forecast. What that means is they are saying, hey, we have been betting on some risky investments that have paid off for a long time. They're not paying off anymore. We're deep in a hole. We need to stop making risky investments. We need to start making more solid investments. So they lowered their projection to 6.5%. STRS changed to 7.5 and has been lowering theirs ever since as well. So if you take a look at historically in the state, the funding ratio back in the 90s was over 100% funded. That because all of a sudden, this is a California situation every time. You get a governor in place, they're like, hey, we got a budget surplus. Let's spend that real quick and create a lot of plans that'll sink us into a depression. Yes, here we go. They were 128% funded. They passed SB 400, which gave better pensions, more payouts. And look what happens. Boom, we begin to slide. The dot-com crash happens, so the stocks go down. It drops. Then we get this great push back up to 100%, and then the Great Recession drops it down to 61. We're hovering around the 70% funded, and that's even with more money coming in. So lowering projections is a huge deal. Um, Huge deal. When you start looking at kind of the weighted annual returns, there is no stability in the investments. Even through the pandemic, you might have remembered in 2020, the stock market really sunk because of the pandemic. But in 2021, it had one of the best years ever. And that's, we get, we, we live on that in a sense with 27% rate of return. The year right afterwards is a negative 1.3. So there is no stability lately in these. Here it goes up through 2024. Again, a little bit better recently, but again, they're lowering their projections. They're saying we're going to be more solid with our investments. Still a lot of fluctuations. Anytime we get over the 7%, we should be happy. If we're a little bit under, again, if they were riskier investments, it might have been even worse. So, time rated returns. This is why a lot of people say if you invest in the stock market, you probably can see, between 7 and 8% rate of return. This is our pension going back 30 years. And even with all those fluctuations, it still returns around 7.8%. And 20 years is at 8%, 10 years is at 8.7. 3 years is over 10%. But again, that's because of that huge year in 2020. All right. So those are the weighted returns for the last few years. And again, it's a roller coaster ride in California. The actuals versus the benchmarks, it's crazy. So again, I can see some of you with your AI avatars rolling your eyes. Thanks, Scott. Great. I feel very confident now. Is there anything else? Yes, there is something else. In 2016, we had a judge in Marin County who, and I love people who spike their pensions because it draws more attention to them, and they usually pass laws about doing that. So in Marin County, what people would do is they could convert certain aspects of their job to part of the pension as qualifying time, which in a sense spikes the pension. Now, Others here, let's say Miracosta is a hotbed for bringing in administrators who want to work about 3 years. If you understand our pension system, 36-month window is what we have. And so what they'll do is they'll come here, they'll work for 3 years, get that average way up, and then they can retire. That is not considered pension spiking. That is exactly what the pension does. It is based on a formula. They are using the formula. If they tried to do something else, like I've heard people say, I'm going to teach a lot of overload that last year, and that's going to bump up my pension. Well, I've got some bad news for you. It will not do anything like that. But I love the thought. So we have rules that prevent us from doing things like that. But this judge said, and I want to quote directly from the ruling, and the legislature may, prior to the employee's retirement, alter the formula, thereby reducing the anticipated pension. So long as the modification does not deprive the employee of a reasonable pension, there is no constitutional violation. Um, wow. So you can picture this. You're getting ready to retire. You've planned everything out. It's January. You're going to retire at the end of May, and the legislature modifies the calculation. And again, as long as they consider it a reasonable pension, there's no violation. That ruling scared me. All right. But CalSTRS continues to try to paint a rosy picture, which is great for them. So back in 2024, unfunded liabilities were now $107 billion. But they said, hey, we're on track to get there by 2046. Our assets are going up. That's fantastic. Yes, the assets are going up. You know what else is going up? The amount they have to pay out is going up. The number of people retiring is going up. And when people retire, it's a double whammy because they're not paying money in. Typically, people who are retiring are near the top of the pay scale. So that's where you get the bigger money. I mean, it's almost like enacting a billionaire's tax in California. I mean, I wonder what could possibly happen with that. I'm sure they'll all stay. All right, but there was a report issued for those of you who attended my fall workshop. I try to make sure there's always some new information. There was a report issued in November of 2025 by CalSTRS, and it stated, hey, we're actually at 88.7, and it provided a breakdown. The state's share, so it's basically saying there's two ways this money can be made up, either through the employer or through the state. Remember, they're not going to change us again because they'd have to give us another benefit. So they said the state still owes 10.2 billion and the employer owes 78.6. Okay. Now, what they also said is, hey, even though we're $88 billion in the hole, things are looking great. We should be out of this big problem by 2043, which is 3 years earlier than expected. Remember, they said 2046. So the new picture they draw of their made up fairy tale looks something like this. They believe the state will be out of its debt within 3 more years. Yeah, we'll see about that. But anyway, that's what they believe. And then after that, the state will stop contributing that extra money because they are out of their commitment. And then the employer would continue theirs, and eventually the rainbow will come down to the pot of gold at the end. Well, you shouldn't just read CalSTRS reports. You should read other reports that are maybe contradictory to that. The projected K-12 enrollment. I'm sure all of you know we tend to get most of our students coming out of high school. We do get some returning students, but the majority come right out of high school. And the state of California is predicting, because it's so expensive to live here. And what else? Oh, kids are expensive. Uh, People are not having as many children as they used to, which means from almost 6.2 million students, will be down under 5.2 million students. A decrease of 1 million actual students as we get closer to 2023. Now, that means there will be a lot more competition for the students who are graduating. And if you've noticed anything about Cal State San Marcos, every time they have a enrollment drop, they lower their standards of admission. They just accept more students. There was a bill recently that said all students will be eligible um, to go to a CSU. And that bill said you can also attend community college and it doesn't stop you from having that right. We'll see how many students want that. There still seems to be a stigma with community colleges as students say things like, oh, I had to go to MiraCosta. Um, Even though I think people who work here say, I think you're getting at least the same quality of some of the other state schools. All right. Well, how can I get out of this? How can I help myself? What should I do, Scott? Start saving when I'm 20? Yeah, I need a time machine, and I do not own a DeLorean. So this table provides a quick glimpse into what's known as financial independence. Sometimes people call it retirement. I call it financial independence because it's the time when you don't have to do the thing that you're doing for money. You can choose to do it, but you don't have to do it. So, what you see in this table is how many years until financial independence. If your annual spending is going up the y-axis and the after-tax annual income is going across the x-axis. So, as an example here, I'll choose this first one. If you were bringing home $30,000 after tax and you were spending 25,000, then this is assuming you're putting the $5,000 away to protect you as you get closer to retirement. Then you would need to work 41.5 years. And after that point in time, you could choose to continue working or you could stop working. That's financial independence. Now, moving across, you can see if you bring more money in and you kept the same spending levels, that's great. So $60,000 with spending at 25 means you'd be at the 13.2. 13.2 years is what it would take before you're financially independent. Let's see. Now, for most of you, if you, again, full-time faculty are probably going to be closer over here to the after-tax, probably in the getting closer to the six-figure range, if not the six-figure range. So, again, if you look at it, if you jump into the California lifestyle and you make sure that you've got the new car, you want to make sure the neighbors know you've got money now, your spending goes up. If your spending goes up with the money you're bringing in, it can take you a long time to reach financial independence. I'll bring up $100,000 and spending $85,000. So $15,000 of extra income, you put that away. That number is 41.5 years. That's the same amount of time it would take someone at 30,000 only spending 25 to get to financial independence. I hope for you that you're willing to sacrifice a few things in terms of spending to keep your spending as low as possible to keep you in at least the yellow. You may not have a lot of choices if you're trying to buy a home in this area. Yeah, you haven't picked a great state for what we call affordability. But yeah, again, if you can get into the green, that is great. I can only imagine if I would make $100,000 and my expenses was $20,000. But I am married, and my wife would not live in one of those shipping containers. I thought that would have been great. I think Elon Musk did that too. I was like, yeah, that's great. Okay, so we are going to turn now to the uh, file that I sent out that I linked. Again, my recommendation is that you download that and then open it up in something like Word. Not that you have to, but we're going to start going through that piece at this point. I don't see any questions. I'm trying to check the chat at the same time. So if you see me turning my head, I'm trying to look at the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I'm going to open up this as a Word document. And again, this is the Pension and Retirement Workshop #1. And here it is. Let me make sure with my little sharing tool that I'm sharing. It looks like it is sharing fine. Okay, perfect. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. Can I just have a thumbs up? We're good. We can see this. Can we protect ourselves? Just a thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you so much. Just from at least one person still knowing that we've got people here who are being attentive. So I will need you to grab your cell phone or a calculator. I do not know why my video went off. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Cell phone or a calculator here. And we are going to work through a few math problems. But part of this is making sure that you understand how you can have your money work for you. So I'm going to provide you with a lot of tools today that you can use after this workshop. And let's jump in. Let's do this. So you may remember back in the day a simple interest formula. It's the money I make, my interest that I earn, is the principal, the amount of money I put down, times the rate that is quoted by a bank or financial institution multiplied by time. So for us, we're going to do an example here. We're going to invest $1,000. That's your principal. Your 6% annual interest is your rate, and we're going to do it for 5 years, and that is the amount of time. So let's grab our calculators, and we'll put in 1,000 times 0.06 times 5, and then let's see what we come up with, and feel free to put that into the chat. And I see a few people. Ooh, people are coming in and going out. So if you're new and you don't have access to this worksheet, let's see here. I will put the link here in the chat one more time. Again, I think some of you may not have access to that. If you just showed up, I heard a little chime, so maybe somebody just showed up. Please make sure you are in the MiraCosta Google Suite. Do not try to do this in your personal one. I don't access it to personal ones. So let's see. Ignacio is saying, hey, I think I got this. Multiply that out, and we get $300. All right, not enough to retire on, but we can understand I started with $1,000. I now have 300. All right, now that is called simple interest. And it's simple interest because the rate is always based on the amount of money that you have invested, your initial principal amount. So compound interest is a little bit different. So let's do this together here. So here's what you would do. In your calculator, type 1,000, multiply by 0.06, and multiply by 1. So this is if we have annual interest, compounding annually. Multiply those numbers together, 1,000 times 0.06 times 1. And for just sheer time, I'm going to put this one in because some of you are like, yes, I got it. You don't want to, put the wrong answer out there. So there we go, $60 of interest. Now notice you had $1,000 to start. So in this account, you now have $1,060. What you do with a compound interest account is you take the $1,060 and it becomes the starting amount for the next year. So I'm going to put my 1,060 down here. You could jot this on a piece of paper if you'd like, if you need to, or if you have a digital pen, you can of course write on your device. Okay, now let's multiply that again. So we're going to grab our calculator or cell phone. Again, your cell phone is just fine. It has a calculator built in. And I think you paid about $0 for that. So let's enjoy it. 1,060 times 0.06 times 1. Okay. Right? I'm never sure if everybody's kind of following along or if they're just waiting for me to give them the answer. This is not a math class. Your active participation helps you. It doesn't really do much for me. And then just make sure that what you want to do is add the balance that you had before to the $63.60, giving you now a new balance of $1,123.60. I do want to call attention to one thing. The first year that you had this, you earned $60 in interest. The next year, you earned an extra $3.60. That is interest you earned on that interest payment that was given to you. So in a compound interest account, you're earning interest on the interest that you already had. So now we're up to 1123.60. That becomes my next one, 1123.60. I multiply by 0.6. Sorry, 0.06. Okay. Again, if you thought, hey, it went up by 360, it's going to go up by 360 again. No, it's compounding. So this should be higher than getting $7.20. And in this case, it's actually uh, 67.416. The more decimal places you write down, again, if you're in a science, I know I've got Adria here. She's like, no, 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 no. Hold on, hold on. We've got to make sure we have significant digits. That is not, unfortunately, how the financial industry works. They keep as many digits as possible and they round at the end. And that is to be as exact as possible. So I hear you if you're in that boat and you're like, oh, come on, you can't have a 6/10 of a cent. Um, I guess I would just say watch the gas pumps. You absolutely can. They charge you that 9/10 of a cent at the end of whatever you think you have. And so we should be at 1191.016. All right, I'd like you to finish this up. Take a moment. I'm up to almost $1,200. I'm making interest on my interest. Repeat this two more times. I'll give you about a minute and then I'll put in kind of the total down here. And that would be our total after 5 years. Okay. So I may not put every line, but that's okay. You can check your lines. We're looking at the very end. If you get to the very end, that's fantastic. So let me know what you end up with. I know some of you are like, I did not anticipate a math test today. But hopefully it's also, you're like, that's not too bad. I can multiply by 0.06 and I can add things together. That's not too bad. Yes, Jonathan, nice job. Ignacio, great. Perfect. That's right on. Yes. So again, we started with $1,000. The amount of interest would be $338 and 20, if we rounded at this point, because we'd round if we were cashing out, then we'd have $338.23 of interest. Okay, why is this so important? This is so important because what we're saying is over 5 years, I earned almost 40 additional dollars and I didn't have to do anything different. Investing with compound interest is the way to go. So I'm going to clear all of these off and roll down just a little bit more as we go. All right, now in your cell phone, what I want you to do is, if you have an exponent button, maybe you turn your calculator sideways, feel free. So again, biology, science folks, we're going to basically take 1.06 and multiply it by itself 5 times. So we're basically going to raise it to the fifth power. If you have that in your cell phone, that's great. Sometimes if I turn my cell phone sideways, I get a lot of extra features on my free calculator. So 1.06 raised to the fifth power. Let's see what we end up with. And yeah, that number should look very familiar. If you look inside the chat, even here, we can see Ignacio's number looks very, very similar to that. Jonathan's number looks very, very similar to that. The only thing you'd have to do is take the number in your cell phone when you do this and multiply by 1,000, and you'd have the actual amount of money in the account after 5 years. So this allows us to very quickly get there. But I'm going to assume, I'm making an assumption now that we're not all, as the air quotes, math people. And if we're not math people, we need a way to do this calculation without having to do this calculation. So what I'm going to have us do now is if you have this document downloaded, I'm going to have you scroll down and we're going to look up the FVIF 6% 5 periods. It's in table 1. So I'm going to scroll down now. So I hope I don't make you seasick, but I'm going to go down to table 1 and I'm going to go find 6%. So this table does all the work of all those calculations. So go over till you get to 6%, then go down until you hit 5 periods of time, which would be in this case 5 years. And where do those intersect? Those intersect at a number 1.3382. So what you can do is use this table instead of using your calculator and trying to go back to mathematical formulas. Okay. I'm going to clear my drawing. So if you need to, you scroll down to the table, find what you need. Now notice this goes 1%, 2%, 3% up to 7%. It is whole percentages. So for some of you, it's like, oh, my interest rate is 5.5%. Hey, this is the table we get where we don't have to do formulas. If you want to do 5.5, 5.25%, you may have to use the formula to get more accurate numbers. But this will give you a really good idea. This only goes up to 7%. If you scroll down, there is a second part of table 1. And again, if you did print this off, you could print this so it's front and back. And you would have a way of calculating what do I do when I invest with a lump sum, a one-time payment, and it would go up 1% at a time up to 14%. So you could see that if you did 14%, I'll zoom in a little bit more because I know some of you have said, hey, can you make it a little bit bigger? 14% at 5 years would have been 1.92. So we would have had $900 in interest instead of $300 in interest if we got an interest rate of 14%. So again, a reasonable rate to assume, let's see here, now let's use 6% a safe number to assume. Again, looking at the last 30 years of the pension system, it's closer to 8%. So if you were to say, hey, I'm going to try and shoot for 6%, I think that's probably very reasonable to assume. But you can always track it over time with your investments. Okay, that's table 1. Again, it's called future value interest factor. So here's the big idea. You find your percentage, you find how many time periods, you calculate a single number from the table by just looking it up. And then all you have to do with your calculator is multiply by the amount of money you invested. So if you invested $1,000, you take this number and multiply by 1,000. Now, Adria would be the first to say, hey, if you're multiplying by 1,000, you're just moving the decimal 3 places. You can actually do that in your head. I'm not going to say that's true for everyone, but yes, it might be possible to do something fun like that. All right, so that's table 1. If you scroll down further, because some of you I know you're looking through the whole document because I got to be honest, faculty sometimes make the worst students. Like they're always flipping ahead. What comes next? Like they think they got all the answers already. So I'll just tell you, table 2 is different. It still has the same looking factors, but they are based on, and if you scroll down when you print it off, this is investing with many payments over time. So what's the difference? In table 1, I invest $1,000 one time, or I invest $10,000 one time. In table 2, I invest $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year, which means the next year I also invest another $1,000. That's why the factors are higher here, is because you are putting in more and more of your own money as you do it. So again, here's table 2. It continues up to 8 to 14%, depending on your investments. You can always check that out. And that's with many payments over time. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up. Sorry for the seasick. I'm just going to scroll back up because there are a few questions I want us to try. If you invest $10,000 today, so please notice $10,000 today is not the same as saying $1,000 per year. If it says per year or per month, that is a investment of multiple dollar amounts over time. Okay. So let's do the first one together. $10,000 today at 8% compounded annually. How much will you have in 10 years? Well, I'm going to go to table one and I'm going to look up the future value interest factor by looking up 8%. I may have to go to that second page because 8% is a little bit higher. So Ignacio said, could I use 6%? I'm going to use 8 because again, that's the 30-year rate of return. And then look up 10 periods. So go down a little bit further in the table, find the factor that you would use. And let's find that factor and we'll write it here. Someone wanted to look that up. 8%, 10 periods in table number one. Okay, I'm going to switch over. I will scroll down and kind of show where that would be located. Okay, so we're going to go 8%. Table one, it stops at 7%. So I'm going to go 8%. And then I'm going to drop down to 10 periods. So Ignacio, I think you're close. I think you use the number over here in the 10% range. So just make sure it's 8% down to the 10 years, which would be 10 periods, 2.1589. Okay. So what would I do? All I have to do is put 2.1589 and multiply by 10,000. Again, using the cool trick from biology / math and science, 10,000 is just a bunch of zeros. It's 4 zeros, so move the decimal 4 places, and you will have your final result without a calculator. You can use that tool and impress friends at parties. And if they're not impressed by that, I don't know, tell them to go be friends with ChatGPT or something like that. Okay, so there we go. What does this mean? If you had $10,000 today, and you could guarantee 8% compounded annually, in 10 years, you will have more than doubled your money, right? I've got $21,000 now. That's my future amount. I've made $11,000 plus in interest. Okay? Now, for those of you who are like, well, wait a minute, what if I was compounding more often? You could do that with these tables. You just have to be a little careful. If it was 8% but compounded semi-annually, semi-annually means twice a year, then you would have to go down and say in 10 years, I would actually have 20 periods of time. So you can see these tables are not necessarily made for that in an ideal world because you would need tons of periods of time to do this. But 20 periods, so you'd look up 4% because you'd actually be getting part of the interest halfway through the year. And you do that 20 time periods. It would be a little bit higher than 21,589. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to write that one down because I'd like us to jump to see what happens if we leave our money in longer. So we were just on that table. I'd like you to look up 10,000 that you invested at 8%. We're going to do it now for 30 years. So if you can look up the one that says 30 periods of time, that's what we need. Find that factor, multiply by $10,000. Let's see what number we come up with. And I'm not 100% sure because most of you are just a black box with a name. So I'm going to scroll down to kind of show you where you would find that. In case you're kind of struggling, like, hey, where would I find that? Or if you're just watching the video later. So I'd come down here, table one, 8%. I'd go down to 30 years and it says 10.0627. So that's what I would put in right here. 10.0627 multiply by $10,000 and you'd have $100,627 at the end of 30 years. So again, you put in $10,000. The longer you leave it in, the more interest you earn on the interest. All of a sudden, you now have 10 times the amount of money that you initially invested. Okay, now there may be some of you right now who say, Scott, I'm an associate faculty. I don't have $10,000 right now to invest. Maybe over the course of a year, I could save up 1,000, maybe. I said, okay, well, let's do this. Let's do $1,000 per year, and we're going to do 8% compounded annually. This one, you look it up in table 2, but it's still the same 8%, 10 periods. Just use table 2 to find your factor. And let's see how much money you'll have at the end. Please notice, over 10 years, $1,000 a year, you will have invested $10,000 total, the same amount of investment as the first one. Doesn't mean you'll have the same amount of money, but again, that's what you would be looking at. So we're going to kind of scroll down here. So again, I'm going to go to table 2 this time. I'm going to go kind of quick so I can get there. Table 2, 8%. I'm going for 10 years, and it looks like 14.4866. Okay, so I'll come back up to my top here. Let's see here. I need that to be on the line. If I can, please go on the line. There we go, maybe. Okay. 14 point, whatever that was, 4866, something along those lines. So you end up with $1,000, something along that. I don't remember the exact factor number, but there it is. So this says you have $14,000, but you invested $10,000. How come there's more money in the first account than there is in this one if you both invested $10,000? What's the difference? What the heck? As the TikToks say, the math isn't mathing. Um, but it really is mathing, isn't it? Because if you had $1,000 that first year, you earned interest on $1,000 only. Whereas in the first case, you earned interest on $10,000, which would be 10 times the amount of interest that you've earned. And again, that continues. Now, in the next year, you're earning interest on $2,000, which is better, but still not at the $10,000. So if you were to keep this up, $1,000 per year for 30 years, please understand that you've now invested $30,000. And this factor should be quite a bit higher because you've now invested $30,000. Eventually, your money will outpace the person who just invested with a lump sum. So if I go over here and I scroll down to table 2, 8%, 30 periods, I should have more than $100,000. And we'll scroll down here, table 2, 8%, 30 periods is, now let's jot this down this time, 113.2832. Okay, so if I scroll back up to where I had all my numbers, this is a nice one now. I love factors that big. That's a huge factor. So um, this is going to say 113.2832. I multiply by 1,000. That's $113,283.20. So now you're like, ha ha ha, I did better than the person who invested $10,000 and waited 30 years and they just invested $10,000. And the answer is yes, you did, in one sense. But please remember, since you put $30,000 of your own money in here, only $83,000 is interest, whereas for the person up here, around $90,000 is interest. So technically, they still came out a little bit ahead, but that's what happens. Investing early on and letting it grow, that compound interest is really, really, really hard to beat. You could do additional problems if you'd like. There's a really fun one right here. The solution will be in the slide deck if you're interested. The idea of investing $1,000 now for 10 years and then waiting 20 years without investing a penny from that period versus saying, I don't have the money right now, Scott. Let me wait 10 years and then I'll start investing $1,000 per year. So one person invests $1,000 per year for 10 years and then stops, leaves the money for 20 years. The other person waits for 10 years, investing nothing, and then they start investing for the next 20 years to catch up. Um, Very interesting to see how that plays out. I'm going to drag past all of the tables. Tables are there for you if you wanted to. You can play around. You could kind of bring your spouse or partner into it, kind of say, hey, let's play a game tonight. It's going to be what's our future money look like? So again, if you wanted to use the tables, you're welcome to. You could assume a 6% rate of return. Again, if you're doing this monthly, the problem's going to be on the chart. You would need 360 rows. I did not create that chart for you. So instead, what you could do is you take your monthly, multiply it by 12, and then find the factor for the annual, and it's going to be pretty darn close. I'll tell you that. Might be off by a tiny little bit. You might have a little bit more in there, but it's pretty doggone close. And this one did use a 6% rate of return, Ignacio. So I didn't always stick at the 8%. Okay. So you could try this if for those math friendly folks. I did put the formulas in if you prefer to use the formulas. R is your rate, N is number of times compounding per year, and T is the number of years. So use the one on the left if you invest a lump sum, use the one on the right if you invest with monthly payments or annual payments. I put the table back in here. Again, this is the financial independence piece. Let's talk now. We got 20 minutes left. I want to hit some of the terminology. Some of you have heard of these pieces, some of you have not. The goal of this first workshop is to kind of give you the basics so that you feel a little bit more comfortable talking about it. I think when we don't know anything, we're hesitant to even enter a conversation. So I hope this gives you a little bit more power over that. So terminology, you'll see things like a catch-up or catch-up age or catch-up contributions. Once you reach age 50, you can actually contribute more to your retirement accounts that guarantee some type of tax benefit. Again, you have to be age 50 or older. The defined benefit supplement, a DBS, is what CalSTRS offers if you work more than 100% of a contract in a year. Now, you might think this is only for full-time faculty, but I will tell you a number of associate faculty have a DBS account because when you work like a freeway flyer, you're teaching at so many schools, the total amount of units that you teach ends up being more than 100% of a full-time faculty member's contract, and therefore the extra pay would go into this supplemental account. Um, think of it as kind of like a retirement account if you choose to work more than 100%. Be aware when you invest for retirement, if you try to pull money out early, you may get a distribution penalty. That can be like 10% or more, and you'll also be taxed on it fully. The age limit for most accounts is 59 and a half, just so you're aware of that. Next up is the pension, sometimes called a defined
Hey,
benefit.
Scott, sorry to interrupt you. Can you repeat that very last thing you said?
The
Sorry.
distribution penalties?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you invest in supplemental retirement plans, uh, like the 403B as an example of one, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, then you can't take money out of it until you reach the age limit for that account. Now, the 457B doesn't have the same provision. 457B was designed for police officers and firefighters who tend to retire a little bit earlier. So you can access the money as soon as you have said that you have retired for those accounts. But for a 403B or a 401K, if you've worked in the private industry, the age limit is 59 and a half. Even if you retire before that, you will not have access to that account fund until you reach age 59 and a half.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Again, pension, the defined benefit, sometimes called DB, not to be associated with any other acronym, which would be a DB, if you use that language. Let's see here. So yeah, all three of us contribute. The state, you, and your employer, we all kick money in. This is the fun piece because while there is a cash amount listed in your account, it says this is how much money you have. Please remember, it doesn't matter how much money you have because it's a defined benefit, not a defined contribution. So when you retire, you're basically turning that account over to CalSTRS and saying, I give you all of this money. Please pay me the benefit that you have in your handbook. That's what happens there. Okay. Also, please be aware when you do put your money away for the pension, whether it's the DBS or the DB account, that is a tax shelter deduction. It is tax deferred. So you will pay income tax on your pension when it is paid out to you. Again, if you get old enough, if you live long enough, woohoo, you will have a required minimum distribution from all tax deferred accounts. This now, right now, is at age 73 is the required minimum distribution age. So by the time you reach 73, you are required to pull money out of your 403B, of your IRA, of your 401k. You are required to. But if you have invested in a Roth version of those accounts, they do not require withdrawals in the RMD category. Okay, that's the federal government saying, hey, you deferred your tax. We want our money. Start taking it out. So you got to take money out and they will tax you on it at that time. Three tax terms to understand. There's tax deferred. If you wanted to highlight that on the sheet, maybe some of you printed it out or you have some kind of digital pen, you could circle the fact that tax deferred means you contribute with pre-tax dollars. That means no one has calculated how much income tax you owe on it. They just put the money into the account. A tax-free account means that you are paying in with after-tax dollars. What does that mean? MiraCosta takes money out for taxes. I now have the money. I've already paid tax on it, and I invest that amount. If you have a tax-free account like a Roth, then the growth of that investment can be pulled out without being taxed. And that is extremely rare for that to happen. Very few tax-free accounts exist. And don't forget your tax rate, sometimes known as a marginal tax bracket. Remember, the bracket tells you how much you earn on an additional dollar made in that bracket, sometimes known as a marginal tax bracket because it deals with the next dollar that you earn. So if you're in the 24% tax bracket, you did not pay 24% tax on all your income. You only pay it on the next money that you earn. So again, if you've retired and you're in the 22% income and you have to take this required minimum distribution, it could push you into a higher tax bracket. So you do have to be careful with that. And unfunded liabilities, we've heard about those typically at the state level and CalSTRS. That's the difference between the money on hand and the money needed to pay your pension. Or if it's you personally, then it would be pay your bills. We do not want unfunded liabilities in our personal life. Okay? That is not a good thing. Right? Here, insurance for car insurance comes due, and you're like, I guess I won't be paying that this month. Okay, so there's a few pieces in here if you wanted to read over them a little bit more detail about things like a defined benefit. I've already talked about it quite a bit and it's been in the videos. The defined benefit supplement, please understand you contribute 8 or 9% to the DBS fund. The employer contributes 8%, but the extra 2.5 does pay the account fee, then accumulates interest and um, oh, how do I put this? Remember that we're supposed to be paying in 10.25%. This account says you only have to pay 8%. The STRS has made a decision that they're going to take 10.25% right off the bat because they're like, it's so hard to calculate things with computers these days. So they take 10.25% of everything. And by the time it gets through the course of the year, they're like, oh, we took too much. Oh, we're so sorry about that. Let's give that back to you. So you pay extra. It's an unlawful thing. I'm waiting. We can all join together, make a class action lawsuit and sue them because it is theft of your wages and they will pay it back to you if you wanted to check your pay stubs in November. So your pay stub for 11/30 did have your what is known as I can't even think. I'm so frustrated by this. They have the excess contributions. That's the name of it. Excess contributions to STRS are refunded back to you. It can be anywhere from a few dollars up to almost $3,000. I've seen it that high. Just so you understand, the government wants tax. The state wants tax. If you haven't seen already, the state's having another budget crisis. So, of course, they're going to bring more taxes into it because that's the best way to do it. Whatever you do, don't cut spending. Sacramento, you're doing great. So the typical tax structure is you earn money and you pay tax on it. If you invest that money, you pay tax on the earnings that you get. So if you are investing right now in like a CD, because you're like, the rate was almost 5%, at the end of the year, you get the money back. That interest that you earned is taxable. But if you have a tax deferred structure, you earn money, you invest it immediately, and you don't pay taxes. You don't pay taxes on the earnings in any year that you earn them. But when you start pulling money out, that's when you pay tax on them. This would involve individual retirement accounts. That's an account that you do outside of your employer. 401k, which is private corporations, 403b, which is public entities, and a 457b, which is a restricted number of public entities. MiraCosta qualifies for the last two. You actually can fund both of them. And tax-free growth structures. Again, you earn money, you pay tax on it, then you invest, and the government says we're not going to tax your growth. So rare. Roth IRAs, the Roth 403Bs, and just in case you're wondering, there is now a Roth 457B. I didn't put it into this. I'll have to update this. I'll type it in right now. Roth 457B, which is great. And things like 529 savings plan. The 529 savings plan, if you have one for like your child to go to college, to kind of help out with that, that's great. Just be aware that if they use the funds for educational purposes, then they don't get taxed on the growth. If you give that 529 to them as a custodial account, they pull it all out, they are taxed in full. And there may be penalties on that as well. So just be aware of that as you go. Okay. Let's see here. How do these affect your take-home pay? This is a really important piece. For most people, it's like, Scott, what's the bottom line? Hit me with some information here that's helpful. All that talk doesn't mean anything. All right, well, here we go. Let's do this then. So if you are in California and you're earning a decent salary, you are probably in the federal 22 to 24% federal tax bracket. And most likely, you are also probably in the 10% bracket or higher in the state. Okay, you also have to pay Medicare, which is 1.45%. You add all that together, and you're probably around 35% of every dollar that you earn after a certain amount goes to tax. So what we do is let's say, how much money do we want to contribute to the 403B? I don't know. Let's put a number down. We'll say $400 a month. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put 400 bucks away. Okay. But what we have to do is now we come down and say, hey, I'm going to get taxed at 35%. So again, you think, oh, I'm going to earn $400. No, you're not. 35% of that's going to go to the tax man right off the bat. So what you have to do is come over and say, wait a minute, my non-taxed rate is 65%. That's the amount that's left over that I don't have to pay to taxes. Take your cell phone or your calculator and multiply the $400 by the 65%. And that is how much you will actually see or feel in your take-home pay. And I'll put the number in there for those of you who kind of wanted to check, if you're not wanting to put it into the chat. There it is. Okay, so let's just be clear on what this says. I have $400 that MiraCosta was going to pay to me. I tell MiraCosta not to pay it to me because if they pay it to you, you only get $260. You say, please put all $400 into my 403B account, and they do that, how much money did you lose? You didn't lose $400. You lost $260. Again, that $140 would have been paying tax anyway, right? So nice little piece here that kind of shows how this works. If you're interested, you actually could say, Scott, what's the maximum? The maximum right now is $24,500. If you make payments over the 10 payments you get paid if you're full-time faculty. Again, 65% is the non-tax rate. Multiply 0.65 times the 2450, and you can say, Scott, I'm actually only going to lose $1,592.50 every month, but almost $2,500 goes into my retirement account and starts growing, giving me that cushion that says, hey, my pension's not going to cover everything. This page lists all the retirement options that I know of that are available. 401k, you don't qualify for that unless you also work at a private corporation. 403b, yes, you qualify. 457b, yes, you qualify. So if you look at this, 24/5 and 24/5, that's 49,000 you could put away and not be taxed on or put away into the Roth accounts. That's pretty impressive. And the Roth 403b is an option. If you split between the Roth and the traditional, the total amount between those two accounts is the amount that's listed here. So be very careful with that. Once you reach age 50, you can put in an extra $8,000. And thank you to the Secure 2.0 Act in 2024, you can put in an extra $11,250 if you are aged 60 to 63. Please understand, no matter how much money you're kicking in right at the end, it doesn't have enough time to earn interest on interest as much as you would have liked. Yeah, sorry about that. All of these amounts are updated to 2026 tax year, including the Roth and the catch-up for the Roth. So you have a lot of options. I'm not going to tell you how to invest your money, where to invest your money, but you have a lot of options. My grandparents used their mattress because they didn't trust banks after they came through the Great Depression. As you can imagine, you're not gaining anything to inflation. As a matter of fact, your value that you have goes down year after year if it's not earning interest. You're the one who gets to pick who to invest with. If you're interested, you can go to 403bcompare.com. And this lists a lot of vendors. You can sort that by what their fee structure is. And if you're interested in why fees are important, I did put a few examples down here. The color coding matches the market accounts. If you put the exact same amount of money into each one of the accounts, here's the different dollar amounts you could end with after 30 years investing just $1,000 a month. Notice one of them is up around the 1.216, whereas another one is down around 737,000. All of these are accounts that are listed on the 403b website, so you could select them. So you are in charge of a lot, and you want to make sure you do a little bit of work to make sure you find things that have a very low expense ratio, that have a very low fee for assets under management. Anyway, those are things that you'll want to take a look at as you go forward. They don't come out and say, "Welcome to Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe," um, or the Bernie Madoff Investment Consulting Group. People actually thought that was a great thing at the time. So they don't tell you that they're going to screw you over. They all want your money so they can invest. If you need more information, I put some links on here that I think you'll find helpful. And we'll head back to the slide deck. So again, in the slides, you can actually see all of the calculations that are done. They match what you had in that document if you wanted to kind of get the answers correct. There they are. And if you wanted to max out your investments and do that for 30 years, $24.50 a month, if you started now, you would have almost $2 million and about 1.2 million in earned interest. And that's for one account. You could certainly max out both accounts. You'd have around 3.8 million. And honestly, you might not need to work for 30 years if you're setting aside that kind of money. And this is for the document you had here. Again, this shows all the contribution pieces. Please understand that 1592.50 that we calculated, it means it only costs 477,750 to have the 1.94 million saved up. But don't forget, if you have almost $2 million, the government's going to want a piece when you start taking your contributions. So the required minimum distributions will hit you. Again, that's a bit of a problem. I've heard from many faculty, hey, Scott, thanks for that. I'm not going to invest because I have a pension. Okay. All right. Let's look at the pension calculation. I will do a lot more with this in the second workshop if you come back at 11. But the pension calculation is really simple. It's years of service times the age factor times your final salary. That's it. Now, the payout can be reduced by selecting a beneficiary, but let's just take the one that doesn't have that. So if you work for 25 years, let's say you start here at 35, right? You had other jobs and things, but yeah, you had to live, so all the money's gone from that. So 25 years of service, you are at 25, let's say at age 60 now, so 2% at 60, take 2% times 25, you get 2% per year of service is what it comes out to, which is 50%. So even if you were making $160,000, once you click that button and retire, you are now bringing in $80,000. This is known as the retirement gap. So whether you think the pension system is going to completely fail or whether you think, no, it's going to be there, but I still am going to have a gap, you'll want to consider supplemental retirement options. Again, $80,000 for some of you, like that's going to work just fine for me. I don't need that much money. Again, if you were living on 160 previously, 80,000 is a drop. Okay, so you still have, for some of you, the same bills or similar bills, something to think about as you go forward. I've also heard people say, hey, how am I supposed to afford this? Well, here's how. This is the 25-26 salary schedule, which is the one we're in right now. You take a look at class 3, step 4, 109,913. I'm going to go forward one slide and show you what does it look like in the next salary schedule. They have moved up one step. It's now 117,609. So if you took the 117,609, subtracted the 109, you just went up by almost $8,000. So that's great. And if you wanted to, I did put together a Google Sheet. Again, it has to be done in the in your MiraCosta account, but I did put together a sheet that shows you, and this link is here. You're welcome to use it if you want. Here's the analysis. You can say, here's the step I'm at. Here's my contract. This is the retirement system, my COLA, put everything into the green boxes. And what is your assumed rate of return? So Ignacio, I put in 5% for this one, not even 6%. And what we're saying here now is we put in the percentage of increase, how much money I made as an increase, my salary, and then I get this much additional money that year, and I can put a percentage in there of how much money I want to kick into retirement. So if you put in half of the max, right? Look over here what happens. Before long, you have maxed out the account and you're contributing to the second account. So you can continue contributing. And I put that this goes up by about $500 per year. That's been the historical piece. Before long, before you get to retirement, you might be maxing out both accounts as you go. I did put in a caveat. Once you hit age 50, I allowed you to put in more money because that's the catch-up factor. So this document is pretty good if you're kind of saying, how am I supposed to afford this? You can afford it by putting money together from your annual increases. If you want to, I'll put the link to the retirement gap analysis here. I'll do more with it in the second workshop. I'm not going to go into it now, but it is a link there if you're interested in looking at that. What is my retirement gap? And please take a look. If you go to an investment person and you're going to use a human fund manager and not use indexed funds, you will have someone who charges you and who will oftentimes tell you you want to go into one of these accounts or the other. If you want to see which one is right for you, you need to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. I watched the investment guy come to Miracosta, the guy who does the fringe benefit consortium, and the lies that he said. Yes, I did bring it up during that session, um, and I'm pretty sure I was not invited to the next sessions. But you should look at this. Remember the Roth, I'm putting money in after I was taxed, but the traditional, I'm putting it in before I was taxed. So they can't say I'm putting $400 into each account because it's not $400. One of them I should be putting $260 because that's my after-tax amount. And if you compare those, you'll see that they are virtually identical over the course of time. 10:30. It's a little bit after 10:30, so I won't have time to do the pay stub calculation, but please note, if you check your November 30th pay stub, it did have the excess contribution refunded in it. Again, that's one of the pieces that's there. I'm not going to go through the full pay stubs, but I hope that you found this informative, appealing. Maybe it's like, ooh, I got to come back for that next session where he goes more in depth. That's up to you. I'll leave it completely up to you as we do it. But I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you got to see some of the pieces that um, might have been interesting for you. The list of approved vendors is available through the Miracosta uh, HR department, but it also links to, I believe, there's like a go-between right now, and that's Schools First. So Schools First provides a list of all those vendors, Adria. The link for the spreadsheet is in the slide deck. The slide deck will come out afterwards. So Jonathan, thank you for that question. But again, I'll give you all of this is here. You just need to be logged into your Miracosta account. So if you get an access denied, it's just because you're not in your Miracosta account. Everything is open there for you as you choose to go through it. So what I'll do now is my next session doesn't start till 11. I usually just kind of chill out and people bring questions or they ask additional follow-ups from the presentation. So I'll stick around here. If you want to stick around and ask questions, feel free. If you need to jump out and do something else before your next session, I hope you have a great day of Flex. We'll see you. Uh, Adria, let's see here. I don't know, have you looked to find the list of approved vendors or not yet?
I'm looking right now because you said it was school first, so I was just Googling that.
Well, Schools First is the provider through Miracosta. So let me open up a incognito window here and I'll jump over to Miracosta to kind of show you where that's at. I'll share my screen again.
Yeah, but I'm guessing that we just have this list of approved vendors and we can't have an outside advisor.
You can have an outside advisor as long as they're not the person you're sending the money to.
Well, no, I guess I mean like that I already have an account with Morgan Stanley and I was wondering if I could just have them manage it, but it looks like probably
Most
not.
likely not. So let's see here. That should be sharing. I should be, right? Does it show that I'm sharing? I think I'm
Yeah.
sharing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go over to, I guess, A to Z index. I'll go down to human resources. They've made their website, they tried to make it better, but I got to tell you, it's an absolute nightmare. So, where do I go? Okay, I got to go to, I believe, benefits, and then employee benefits, blah, blah, blah. Our full-time benefits guide, retiree information. Nope. See, it's not there. It's in HR. Okay. This is why I really love their form. Mm-mm. Okay, so I'm gonna search. I'll search HR's website for supplemental. Let's see here. Miracosta.edu supplemental retirement. Voluntary retirement. Employee benefits section. Let's see if it gets me there. No, that's the same freaking thing. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll click on the benefits guide. Let's see if it says anything. Blah, 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 blah. No, no. Additional services, retirement plans. I'll click on 25. Voluntary. Okay, so here we go. So there it is. There's the link of approved. Let me scroll up here. Approved list of investment companies. So if I click on that, is that just 403B compare? It is 403B compare. So 403bcompare.com. It does link. Make sure you go to the MiraCosta. You can set that as your employer. Fine. I'm not going to set that thing, but you can compare and select products. You can go compare products, and this is where you'll see the list of all the different products. The lowest annual costs tend to be with the CalSTRS Pension 2. So again, that would not be with Morgan Stanley. The second one is very, very close, which is the Fringe Consortium. And the Fringe Consortium is a requirement for Roth-based accounts. So you don't have there's even fewer options. Now, inside, once you go to, let's say, CalSTRS Pension 2, right? So you say, I want to look at that. You can go to product details and it will show you a list of all the different things that you could invest in, fees and charges. So again, this is extremely low. I mean, even if you check your Morgan Stanley, I doubt they're at the 0.25%. I mean, that's incredibly low. And investment options, when you click on the investment options tab, it brings up a long list of who could you invest with as your kind of your plan. So you do have a few, thankfully, they do have a few stock market type funds if you're interested in that. But your expense ratio is over on the right-hand side. So please be careful. Even if you go with one that initially said it's very, very low, if you choose an expense ratio of 1.20% for artists and international investors, you're paying for that. And that is going to increase the fees, of course, substantially compared to a lot of the other indexed funds that are down at, let's say, 0.02%. I mean, that's ridiculous. They just have so much in that fund. They're making plenty on it. Vanguard doesn't really care. And yes, you can click. There are 20, 20 items listed there for this is the CalSTRS Pension 2. So if I go back to compare products now, right up here, they do try to put this little guide down here for you, which is um, a little indicator of how much are they charging. 0.32 is the average expense ratio. That is incredibly low. And so that's why they're saying it's in that range. Green is obviously great. Um, their average expense ratio here is 0.08, which is very low, but the annual costs are still higher. So that's where you got to watch the assets under management, et cetera, as you go. So I'm going to go to the second one because I know most people, if they're interested in a Roth, they have to use this product, which is known as Empower or Empower Retirement. And when you go look at investment options here, this is where you might see a series of like BlackRock has age-related funds. So it kind of manages those over time for you. You say, I'm going to retire in 2045. They say, cool, I'll take care of it. So it will invest heavily in stocks right now and begin the transition to bonds over time without requiring additional changes. Not saying that's what you're interested in. I'm just saying these are the things that are kind of out there. This company, Empower, has 3 full pages, 50 total investment options. So again, can you find some really low indexed funds? Holy crap, yes. Even if you're going to go with the Roth account, you can still get into the Fidelity 500, the mid cap. Look at I mean, 0.02 on top of it. And anyway, so plenty of them are no load mutual funds if you're interested in that. But I'll have to leave the rest of it up to you. That's where you go to check things out and compare products. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. So if you are, let's see here, where does it say it here? There's Schools First. So Schools First is a third-party administrator for the deferred compensation plan for those doing supplemental or voluntary retirement systems. There's plan limits. There's a notice for the plans, and it does have a how to enroll if you're kind of new here. I appreciate you being here, and I think it's really good idea to start this early because when you don't see the money coming into your account, you don't think you lost it. It just goes right into the retirement. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Ignacio, Jonathan? Uh,
I think all of us left here are new folks.
oh, wow, you
Yeah,
picked a
this
good,
is
picked a
super
good session.
interesting. So super interesting. I'm gonna be. So what do you go over in the next one? Is it
So the next one, we go over exactly what's going to happen to you as a full-time faculty member. So I go much more into what does CalSTRS look like? How can you look up your years of service to make sure you have that down? How does your sick leave contribute to your pension? And we go through, we will actually have you calculate what your pension will look like based on when you think right now that I'm thinking about retirement in 2045, right? Whatever it is, 19 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever you're thinking. And you can start kind of looking at what is that going to look like money wise. And based on, you know your bills now, especially if you have like a long-term mortgage, you might already be paying on a mortgage right now. You know that that bill is not going to change much. So you can start saying, how much money am I going to bring in retirement? How long do I need to work? And then what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of a calculation that shows what if I work one more year? How much more am I making? What if I worked 2 more years? How much more am I making in retirement? Because remember, every year of service gets that percentage.
Hmm.
And it will go higher than 2%. The maximum, even if you're in the new system, is 2.4% at age, I think, 65 if you're in the newer system. So again, I'm not saying you want to work that long, right? I only bring that, and we'll talk a lot more about, hey, is it worth working that extra year? A lot of people will look and say, I want more money. That's what my goal is. But what you're sacrificing is what? Your time. And no amount of money can ever bring that back. So I just had a colleague of mine who worked here for a long time, 30 years, math department, retired. He was retired for 3.5 years, passed away due to dementia and some other illnesses. So thinking about that, I start thinking when I look at kind of saying I'm going to retire in my 60s, those are not your 50s. Like you are not the same person body wise as you age. You may not have that. Not saying some groups are going to live till 90 plus 100. That's fantastic. I love it. But for many people, 60s and 70s, your body begins breaking down. You're not able to travel quite as much, or it's not as comfortable. So, all the things you talk about you want to do in retirement, we tend to want to do those when we're younger in retirement. We may not want to do those when we're older. So, when you start looking at what would my pension look like and what would how much money I'd bring in look like, you really have to, once you're age appropriate for retirement, which is age 55 or older in the current system, you should be looking every year at how much money my retirement would bring in and how much money I'm working for. Because all of a sudden, if you stopped working, you would make some money. That's not true if you do that before age 55. You won't make any money. That's not how it works. So, and I'll also show the impact of if you do invest in those supplemental plans, like Adria was looking at kind of those other plans for retirement, the 403B, the 457B. So I followed, like I practiced what I preach. So when I got here, I came from Oregon. I wasn't even in the state of California. So we were living at Oregon standard of living. And what we did is we kept that standard of living, which means I'm going to drive older cars. I'm going to drive them for a long time, right? I'm driving a 2015 right now. Before that, I had a 2002 car. I don't upgrade my cars. I fix them. I keep them in good working order. I try to be cheap. I'm cheap. But because of that, I was able to max out both retirement accounts. And now every time we get a COLA, I use that to offset those other investment pieces. So when I now look at my retirement, if you think of yourself right now, Ignacio, as if you got to a stage where you are maxing out both accounts, that means you're putting away 24/5 and 24/5. That's $49,000 a year. The amount of money I take home is significantly lower than what my income making would be if I wasn't doing that. So my retirement gap is very small because when I retire, I won't be paying into these other pieces. Well, that's $49,000 that I could use. And so that's what we talk about in the second when we get into a lot more of those details, which, if you're early in your career, it may not be as critical. I think it's great to see it at least once. There's a number of people who typically come to that session because they want to catch up every year. They want to know where they're at. They want to go through the calculations. They want to see it again. There are calculators on the CalSTRS website, but they don't bring in the same pieces that I do. I've tried them. They don't bring up the idea that your sick leave will continue accruing and that sick leave can be used as years of service. And so we'll bring that up to kind of show how much extra you can get if you're not using all of your sick leave. And I think those are kind of important pieces as you go forward. So that's what's coming up. And then in the third workshop, which I know you're just excited about, you're like, I'm going to spend a whole day with Scott. Wow, what a fantastic time. The third one is for new people, probably one of the more important ones. Understanding retirement is a big one, yes, but that one talks about sick leave accruals, the fact that you have 3 different pay rates, minimum, might have 4, that you get paid while you're here. So it's not, most people haven't read the whole contract to understand all these nuances. What is banked LHE? What is my sick leave? How can I use it? How does it accrue? What does it accrue for? How do I get paid for these different things? Wait a minute, what pay rate? I mean, it's a little complicated, so I try to put that into my third workshop of pay rates, sick leave, banked LHE, and we try to talk about a few other things as well. I'll talk about some of them in the second workshop. You may have heard of it, you may not. There is a workload reduction program that MiraCosta participates in. It's statewide, sometimes affectionately called the Willie Brown Act, but otherwise known as workload reduction. And what it means is when you get to a certain age, in this case 55, you can tell MiraCosta, I'd like to work less than 100%. Now, typically, if you do that, they fire you because your contract says you have to work 100%. But once you get to this age, you can request to be part of this workload reduction program, and you can say, I'd like to work 80%. And what it does is it gives you the idea that I'd like to work a little less. I like more time with my family, whatever that is during the time when I'm in this stage. You can go down as low as 50%. And that means some faculty in that program will teach a full fall term, like a normal load, and then they won't teach it all in the spring and they won't teach over the summer. And they get this idea of they get paid 50% of their salary, but they get a full year of service. And that for some people is like, yeah, I don't need the money as much. If your house is paid off and you want more time with the family, you want more time with the kids, whatever it might be. And so that's a really nice piece. It can give you the idea of what does retirement look like without having to really pull the trigger on retirement. So we'll talk more about those as we go as well. It's about 10 minutes till, so I do want to give you the opportunity to have a little bit of a break if you've been sitting and enjoying the heck out of this session. I hope you did. I'll give you a little bit of time for a break. If there's other questions, though, I want to make sure you have a chance to ask.
I'll see you in 10 minutes.
See you in 10 minutes. Okay, I'll see you shortly then. Take care, everybody. I will I'm just gonna stop the recording, is all I'm gonna do, and I'll start it up when I come back, just so everybody's aware. You'll hear that.